My name is Paisley Thompson. I am 26 years old. The day we buried my dad at St. Mary's Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia, the air had that crisp, biting chill that makes your breath fog up like a secret you're not ready to share. The ground was still soft from the rain the night before, and the scent of wet earth mixed with the lilies someone had piled too high on the casket. I stood there in my simple black dress, the one I'd worn to a few job interviews over the years, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. My mom was right beside me, her face a mask of performative grief dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that looked more like a prop than anything real. Then she leaned in close, her perfume sharp and overpowering, and whispered right in my ear, "Look at you still scraping by like always. Your brother made it big, but I guess some daughters just don't have what it takes to win. Do they?" Her words hit like a slap. I should have seen coming, but even after all these years, they still stung. I didn't flinch, though. Not anymore. I'd learned to hold steady, especially in moments like this where the whole family was watching, waiting for me to crack. My older brother Craig had shown up late, of course, striding in with that confident swagger, his arm linked with my ex-boyfriend Harrison, who he'd somehow pulled into his orbit after everything that happened. Harrison glanced my way, his eyes flickering with something like pity mixed with awkwardness. But it was my mom's voice that echoed in my head, her contempt so raw it made the cold air feel warmer by comparison. She straightened up, then smoothing her expensive coat, the one Craig had bought her last Christmas, and turned to greet some distant relative with a sad smile, as if she hadn't just twisted the knife. Have you ever had a mom who could cut you down with a whisper and then act like nothing happened? I'd love to hear if anyone's dealt with that. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from today? I didn't say anything back to her right then. What was there to say? The service dragged on, the priest's voice droning about eternal peace, while my mind wandered back to how we'd gotten here. My dad, Timothy Thompson, had passed suddenly at 78, a heart attack they called merciful. Merciful for who, I wondered. He had always been the quieter one in the family, letting my mom run the show, nodding along to her endless comparisons between me and Craig. Growing up in our modest house on the outskirts of Richmond near the James River, where the neighborhoods blended from working class to something a bit fancier, I'd felt that favoritism like a shadow that followed me everywhere. From as early as I can remember, my mom made it clear who the golden child was. Craig, 4 years older than me, could do no wrong. He was the one with the big dreams, the charisma that lit up rooms, the kind of kid who teachers raved about and neighbors asked after. Me, I was the afterthought, the reliable one, which was my mom's code for boring and disappointing. She'd say things like, "Paisley, why can't you be more like your brother? He's out there making things happen, not just sitting around." It started small, like when I was 8 and won a spelling bee at school. I came home bursting with pride, clutching that little certificate only for my mom to glance at it and say, "That's nice, honey, but did you hear Craig scored the winning goal in his soccer game today? Now that's something to celebrate." She'd ruffle his hair and pull out the ice cream for him while I slunk off to my room feeling invisible. My dad wasn't much better. He'd just shrug and say, "Your mom's got high standards, Paisley. It'll toughen you up." But it was her who drove it home day after day. By the time I was in high school, the pattern was set in stone. Craig got the new clothes for his debate team tournaments, the extra allowance for networking with his friends, while I worked part-time at a local coffee shop to buy my own stuff. "Craig needs it more," my mom would explain, her voice dripping with that fake reasonableness. "He's got potential, you. Well, you're steady. That's your thing." Steady meant I didn't complain when she volunteered me to babysit the neighbor's kids so she could go to Craig's events, or when she borrowed my savings for his college application fees, because family supports the ones who can go far. It wore on me, that constant reminder that I was less than. I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling fan in our shared house, wondering what I'd done to make her dislike me so much. Was it because I looked more like my dad with his quieter features instead of her side of the family? Or because I didn't chase the spotlight like Craig? Whatever it was, she never hid her resentment. Once, when I was 16 and got accepted into an advanced art program at school, I loved drawing back then, sketching the riverbanks and old buildings in Richmond. She flat out refused to pay the fee. Art. That's a hobby. Paisley, not a future. Craig's taking business classes. That's real ambition. She crumpled the acceptance letter right in front of me, her eyes cold like I was wasting her time even bringing it up. Craig, for his part, soaked it all up. He wasn't outright mean to me growing up, but he knew the score. He'd pat me on the back sometimes, say things like, "Hey sis, don't worry, you'll find your thing." But it always came with that smug undertone like he was the expert on success. My mom fueled it, always pitting us against each other in subtle ways. Family gatherings at our house with aunts and uncles crammed into the living room turned into showcases for Craig's achievements. "Tell them about that internship, Craig." She'd beam, while I'd sit there, my own good grades or part-time job promotions brushed aside with a quick, "Oh, Paisley's doing fine too." Nothing flashy. It made me shrink into myself, doubting every choice I made. By the time I graduated high school, I was desperate to prove myself, but on my own terms. I enrolled in community college in Richmond studying urban planning because I loved the idea of building communities that worked for everyone, not just the flashy types. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt solid. My mom scoffed at it, of course. "Urban, what sounds like a desk job for people who can't aim higher." She pushed me to switch to something practical, like business, like Craig, who was already at a state university on a partial scholarship she'd helped him get by pulling strings with old friends. I stuck with it though, working nights as a barista to pay my way, refusing her help, because it always came with strings. That's where I met Harrison Rodriguez during my second year of college. He was 22, charming, with that easy smile, working as a server at a downtown Richmond restaurant while pursuing his own degree in marketing. We bonded over late-night shifts, complaining about rude customers and dreaming about better days. He made me laugh, made me feel seen in a way my family never had. "You're smart, Paisley," he'd say, "and kind. That's rare." For the first time, I felt like someone valued me for who I was not, who I wasn't. We dated for a year before things got serious. He met my family, and at first it seemed okay. My dad liked him, called him a good kid. But my mom, she sized him up like he was a used car. "He's nice enough," she'd say later. "But does he have ambition? Like your brother." Craig was already making waves by then, interning at a tech startup in Richmond's growing business district. My mom bragged about him, constantly inviting him over for dinners where she'd serve his favorite meals and barely acknowledge Harrison and me. "Craig's talking to investors already," she'd gush, turning to Harrison with a pointed look. "What about you? Still waiting tables?" Harrison would laugh it off, but I saw the way it chipped at him. My mom didn't stop there. She'd pull me aside after whispering, "Paisley, honey, you could do better. Someone more like Craig, driven, successful. Harrison's sweet. But is he going places?" Her words planted seeds of doubt, and I hated how they took root. Still, Harrison proposed 6 months later on a quiet walk along the James River Trail. No big production, just us, and a simple ring he'd saved for $2,000, he told me proudly. I said yes, tears in my eyes, thinking this was my chance to build something away from her shadow. We planned a small wedding, nothing extravagant, but my mom couldn't let it be. She started nitpicking everything: the venue too cheap, the guest list not impressive enough, even the ring. "It's cute, but Craig could afford something better for his future wife." She'd say these things right in front of Harrison, her tone laced with that deep-seated contempt for me, like I was dragging him down. The cracks showed soon after. Family dinners at our house became battlegrounds. My mom would steer every conversation to Craig's latest win: a promotion, a new car, a networking event. "Craig's on track to make 6 figures soon," she'd announce, then glance at Harrison. What are your plans, dear? Still in that restaurant? Harrison started getting quiet, defensive. I'd defend him, but my mom would just sigh. Paisley, I'm just looking out for you. You deserve more than this. Her dislike for me spilled over, making Harrison question if he was good enough for me for her standards. One night after a particularly brutal dinner where she compared our modest apartment to Craig's downtown loft, Harrison snapped at me in the car ride home. Your mom thinks I'm a loser, Paisley. And maybe she's right. I reassured him, but the damage was done. My mom kept at it, calling me privately to say things like, Harrison's holding you back just like you always hold yourself back. Craig would never settle. It was her way of reminding me I was the lesser child, the one she was ashamed of. Then one evening, I came home from class to find Harrison packing a bag. His phone was on the table, buzzing with messages from my mom, texts I'd never seen where she'd been advising him for months. Paisley's always been the disappointment, one read. You can do better. Think about your future. He'd been talking to her behind my back, and now he was leaving saying he needed more than what I could offer. Your mom opened my eyes? He admitted, his voice cold. I want what Craig has, success, stability, not this struggle. I was devastated, sitting on the floor as he walked out the door, clicking shut like a final judgment. My mom had initiated it all, her words, the spark that burned everything down. When I confronted her the next day, tears streaming, she didn't even apologize. I was just being honest, Paisley. Some people aren't cut out for the big leagues. Her eyes held no regret, just that same resentment, like I'd failed her by not being more like Craig. My dad patted my shoulder, mumbling, It'll pass. But it was clear he followed her lead, always had. That betrayal shattered me. For weeks, I barely functioned, calling out from my part-time job, staring at the walls of my tiny apartment. My mom didn't check on me. Instead, she called to brag about Craig's latest deal. See, that's how you move forward. It was like she relished my pain, proof that her low opinion of me was justified. But slowly, anger replaced the hurt. I decided then I wouldn't let her define me anymore. I threw myself into my studies, graduating with honors in urban planning. I landed an entry-level job as a junior coordinator at the city's housing department, helping with community projects. It paid $45,000 a year, nothing flashy, but it was mine. I started small, saving every extra penny. A coworker mentioned real estate investing one day over lunch, buying modest properties, fixing them up for renters. It sounded steady, reliable, like me. I read books on it at night, crunching numbers instead of dwelling on the past. 6 months after the breakup, I bought my first duplex in a quiet Richmond neighborhood, putting down $10,000 from my savings. It needed work, leaky roof, outdated kitchen, but I did most of it myself, learning as I went. My mom laughed when she heard. Real estate? That's for people with money, Paisley. Stick to your little job. Her dismissal only fueled me. Meanwhile, Craig's life looked perfect from the outside. He married a woman from his work circle, bought a fancy house in the Fan District, and my mom doted on them, hosting brunches where she'd pointedly not invite me. They're busy with important things, she'd say if I asked. Her favoritism escalated. She'd give them money for vacations while ignoring my calls. It hurt, but I kept building. I rented out the duplex units, the income covering the mortgage and more. I bought another property a year later, a small apartment building near the university. My job promoted me to project manager, bumping my salary to $60,000. That's when I met Marlo Carter. She worked at a local nonprofit focused on affordable housing, and we crossed paths at a city meeting. She was 28 with calm eyes and a quiet strength that drew me in. We started with coffee after work, talking about Richmond's growth and how to make it inclusive. You see the long game, she said once, smiling. Most people don't. I opened up about my family eventually, the betrayal, my mom's constant put-downs. Marlo listened without judgment. Sounds like she's the one missing out, she said. We dated slowly, building something real. She met my dad before he got sick, and even my mom, who predictably sniffed. She's nice, but is this serious? Craig's wife is from a good family. As my success grew quietly, my properties generating steady income, my net worth crossing $200,000, my mom's attitude soured more. She'd call sporadically, always to complain or demand. Paisley, your brother's stressed. Can you lend him some money? I'd say no, and she'd lash out. Always so selfish. No wonder Harrison left. Her deep dislike showed in every interaction, like I was a reminder of her own failures. When my dad's health declined, she blamed me indirectly. If you were more successful, maybe we could afford better care. It was absurd, but typical. Back at the funeral, as people mingled in the church hall afterward, cheap coffee and store-bought cookies on folding tables, tension built. My mom hovered near Craig and Harrison, laughing at something. Craig set her hand on Harrison's arm like old friends. Harrison had apparently joined Craig's startup as a partner after leaving me riding his coattails. They looked the part: tailored suits, shiny shoes. I stood with Marlo, her presence a steady anchor. A colleague from the housing department approached Tom Ellis, shaking my hand. Paisley, great work on that North Side redevelopment. Those families are thriving now. My mom's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. Tom's words hung in the air, and I felt a small spark of pride flicker inside me, the kind I'd worked hard to earn without anyone's approval. He nodded at Marlo and me before walking away, leaving the room feeling just a bit lighter. But my mom wasn't about to let that moment stand. She marched over her heels, clicking sharply on the tile floor like she was charging into battle, her face twisted in that familiar mix of scorn and disbelief. "What was that all about?" she hissed, grabbing my arm a little too tight, her voice low but cutting through the murmurs around us. "You think a pat on the back from some city worker makes you something special? Craig's built a real business, not some government handout job." Her eyes bored into mine, that deep resentment bubbling up as if my quiet achievements were a personal insult to her. I pulled my arm free gently, keeping my voice steady. "It's not a competition, Mom. I'm just doing my work." But she wasn't having it. She glanced over at Craig and Harrison, waving them closer like they were her backup team. Craig sauntered up his suit, looking a tad too tight around the middle these days, and Harrison trailed behind, avoiding my gaze. "Tell her, Craig." My mom said, her tone demanding, like she was directing a play. "Tell her how real success looks. You've got investors, a team, not playing house with rentals like some amateur landlord." She turned back to me, her voice rising just enough to draw a few stares. "Paisley, you've always been the one who settles. No wonder your life turned out this way." Craig chuckled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Come on, Mom, ease up. Paisley's doing okay." But his words lacked conviction, and I could see the strain in his eyes, the same look he'd had lately when money talks came up. Harrison shifted uncomfortably, muttering something about getting coffee, but my mom grabbed the reins again. "Okay, that's the problem. Your father and I sacrificed everything for you kids, and Craig made it count. You're still driving that old car, living in that cramped place. If you'd listened to me, maybe Harrison wouldn't have seen the light and moved on to better things." Her words were a direct hit, laced with that contempt she'd harbored since I was little, like I was a flaw in her perfect family picture. Marlo squeezed my hand, her presence a quiet reminder that I didn't have to take this alone. But the escalation was just starting. As people started to leave the hall, my mom pulled me into a side room, the one with the old wooden benches and faded religious posters on the walls. Craig and Harrison followed like it was a family meeting she was calling to order. The door clicked shut, and she wasted no time. "We need to talk about the will," she said, her eyes gleaming with that calculating look. "Your father left everything to be split evenly, but that's not fair. Craig's business is struggling a bit. Market dips, and he needs the extra support. You're single, no kids. You can manage with less." She crossed her arms, staring me down. "It's what your dad would want, to help the one who's actually achieving something." I blinked, the audacity hitting me like a wave. Dad's will is clear, and I'm not single. Marlo's right here. but she waved that off, her dislike flashing brighter. "Oh, please, that's not a real family like Craig's. You're just playing at life, Paisley. Always have been. If you cared about this family, you'd step up and give your share to your brother. He's the one carrying our name forward." Craig piped up, then his voice tentative but greedy. "Sis, it would really help. Just a loan, maybe $50,000 to tide us over." Harrison nodded along, but I saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes. He knew this was wrong, but he was too deep in their world now. The pressure built in my chest, that old feeling of being cornered by her expectations. "No," I said firmly, surprising even myself. "I've built what I have on my own. If Craig needs help, he can figure it out like I did." My mom's face reddened, her voice turning venomous. "You ungrateful girl. After everything I've done, pushing you to be better, and you throw it back like this. You're just jealous of Craig, always have been. No wonder I could never be proud of you." Her words echoed in the small room, each one a reminder of the years she'd chipped away at me, starting every conflict with her sharp tongue, her favoritism like a weapon. We left the church soon after, the tension thick as fog rolling off the James River. Marlo drove us home to my apartment in the Churchill neighborhood, her hand on my knee the whole way. "You handled that well," she said softly. "But she's not done, is she?" I shook my head, knowing my mom too well. Sure enough, the calls started that evening. First, a voicemail. "Paisley, think about what I said. Family first. Craig needs you." Then texts escalating. "Don't be selfish. Your father would be ashamed." By the next morning, she'd roped in aunts and uncles, flooding my phone with messages about how I was tearing the family apart by not handing over my inheritance share. It got worse over the following weeks. My mom showed up unannounced at my work, cornering me in the lobby of the city building downtown. "We need to settle this," she demanded, her voice loud enough to make my coworkers glance over. "Craig's deal fell through because of cash flow. You're sitting on those properties, sell one, give him the money. It's the least you can do after how you've disappointed us all these years." Her eyes held that same deep contempt, like my refusal was proof of my worthlessness. I asked her to leave, but she lingered, whispering, "Harrison was smart to get out when he did. Look at you now." The humiliation burned, especially when my boss pulled me aside later, asking if everything was okay. The stress started affecting everything. At home, Marlo and I argued for the first time, nothing big, but the constant family drama wore on us. "You don't have to engage," she said one night over dinner, her fork paused midair. "Set boundaries." But it was hard. My mom's guilt trips were masterful. She'd call crying, saying, "Your brother's losing everything because of you. How can you sleep at night?" Craig piled on too, showing up at my duplex one afternoon with Harrison in tow. "Come on, Paisley," Craig pleaded while Harrison hung back awkwardly. "Mom's right. We're family. Just $30,000 to start." I refused again, but the encounter left me shaking. My health took a hit next. Sleepless nights led to migraines, and I missed a deadline on a big project at work, the Northside one Tom had praised. My supervisor was understanding, but it shook my confidence. Even therapy, which I'd started a year ago, couldn't fully buffer the onslaught. In one session, I broke down, "She hates me, always has. Why?" The therapist nodded. "It's her issue, not yours, but you have to choose yourself." Those words stuck simmering as the pressure mounted. Then came the public humiliation. My mom organized a family memorial brunch at her house 2 weeks after the funeral, inviting everyone, neighbors, old friends, even some of my coworkers she'd somehow gotten numbers for. I went against Marlo's advice, hoping for peace. But as soon as I walked in, smelling the catered food Craig had paid for, or so she claimed, my mom started in front of everyone. "Paisley's here," she announced loudly, her voice saccharine but sharp. "The one who thinks she's too good to help her brother now that Dad's gone. Can you believe it? Craig's struggling, and she won't lift a finger." Gasps rippled through the room, and I felt eyes on me, judging. She pulled me into the kitchen, away from the crowd, but loud enough for them to hear. Sign over your share now, or I'll make sure everyone knows what a selfish daughter you are. Her face was inches from mine, that resentment boiling over. Craig joined, adding, "Mom's just worried, sis." But it was her show, her initiation of the attack, as always. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing this was the breaking point. For years, I'd let her control the narrative, but no more. "Enough," I whispered, my voice trembling. As I turned to leave, she grabbed my wrist, her grip like iron. I stood there in the kitchen, the smell of catered quiche and coffee wafting in from the living room. My mom's fingers digging into my skin like she could force compliance through sheer will. Her face was flushed, eyes blazing with that familiar mix of anger and disdain, the same look she'd given me 100 times growing up whenever I dared to push back. "You listen to me, young lady." She snarled, her voice low but fierce, starting the attack as she always did. "I've put up with your mediocrity long enough. Sign the papers now, or you'll regret it. I raised you better than this selfishness." Craig hovered nearby, nodding along while Harrison lingered by the door looking like he wanted to bolt. But something inside me snapped, a dam breaking after years of holding back the flood. "No," I said louder this time, yanking my wrist free. "I'm done, Mom. Done letting you treat me like I'm nothing. You've always hated me, always favored Craig, always started these fights to make me feel small. But guess what? I'm not small. I've built my own life without your approval or your handouts." Her mouth opened in shock, but I kept going, the words pouring out. "You pushed Harrison away, told him I was the disappointment. You belittled my job, my choices, everything. Well, no more. The inheritance is mine by Dad's wish, and I'm keeping it. If Craig's in trouble, that's on him and you for enabling his every whim while ignoring me." The room went silent, the chatter from the brunch fading into the background. My mom's face twisted, her resentment boiling over into fury. "How dare you? After all I've sacrificed, molding you, pushing you, and you turn on me like this. You're no daughter of mine." She stepped closer, jabbing a finger at my chest, but I held my ground. Craig tried to intervene. "Sis, calm down. Mom's just upset." But I shot him a look. "Upset? She's been humiliating me my whole life. And you've taken everything she gave, never once standing up for me." Harrison muttered something about leaving, slipping out the door, his alliance with them cracking under the pressure. I walked out then, Marlo waiting by the car, her eyes wide but supportive. "Let's go," I said, and we drove off, the memorial shrinking in the rearview mirror. That was my turning point, the moment I chose myself over her toxic grip. No more answering her calls, no more showing up to be her punching bag. I blocked her number that night, and when Craig texted begging for money, I replied once, "Figure it out yourselves." The decision felt heavy at first, like cutting a limb, but as days turned to weeks, a weight lifted. The consequences hit them hard and fast. Without my financial bailout, Craig's startup faltered. I heard through a mutual friend that a key investor pulled out, leaving him scrambling to pay loans, $80,000 in debt, they said. He had to sell his fancy car, downsize from that loft to a smaller place on the edge of town. Harrison jumped ship too, quitting the partnership and moving out of Richmond altogether, probably realizing the sinking boat he'd boarded. My mom. She lost her buffer. No more daughter to dump errands on or use as a scapegoat. She tried rallying the family against me, spreading stories about how I'd abandoned them, but it backfired. Aunts and uncles started seeing through her favoritism, some even reaching out to me privately. "We always knew she was harder on you, Paisley. Good for you standing up." Her reputation took a hit in our tight-knit Richmond circles. At church groups and neighborhood events, whispers spread about how she'd driven her own daughter away. She ended up isolated, relying on Craig, who was too buried in his own mess to cater to her like before. They lost the family home, eventually couldn't keep up the mortgage without Dad's pension fully covering it, and moved into a modest condo, the kind she'd always mocked me for living in. It wasn't revenge in the dramatic sense. but it was justice, their lives crumbling under the weight of the imbalances she'd created while I thrived. For me, healing came in waves. I doubled down on therapy, unpacking those years of feeling unworthy, realizing her dislike was about her own insecurities, not my flaws. Marlo and I grew closer, turning our apartment into a real home with plants on the windowsills and weekend hikes along the Appalachian Trail nearby. My career soared. I got promoted to senior project manager at the housing department, overseeing bigger initiatives like revitalizing old warehouses into affordable units. My salary hit $75,000, and my properties, they generated another $40,000 annually in passive income. I even started a small side consulting gig advising locals on real estate without the flash. We built a chosen family too, friends from work, Marlowe's nonprofit circle, even a support group for adult children of toxic parents. Holidays became ours. Thanksgiving with them instead of enduring my mom's barbs. I slept better, laughed more, felt seen. Marlo proposed 6 months later on a quiet evening by the river, her ring simple but meaningful. "You're my steady," she said, echoing what my mom had twisted into an insult. We married in a small ceremony at a local park. No drama, just love. Looking back, I learned that family isn't blood. It's the people who lift you, not tear you down. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're survival. I won't let my mom or that side of the family hurt or use me again. If they change, maybe we'll talk. But until then, I'm free. What would you do if your mom treated you like this? Share your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear how you set boundaries.